In 1996, an American acoustics engineer named Thomas Danley carried a rack of measuring equipment up the ascending passage of the Great Pyramid and set it down inside the king's chamber. He was not there to look for ghosts or gods. He designs loudspeaker systems for stadiums, and he wanted to know how the room behaved when it was driven with sound. What his instruments recorded stopped him cold. The empty granite box in the corner, the chamber itself, the whole space was tuned. It rang at specific frequencies, a low chord sitting below the floor of human hearing, as if the room had been built to resonate on purpose. A stadium engineer had walked into a 5,000-year-old tomb and found a speaker cabinet the size of a house. That single measurement is where this story starts, but it is not where it ends. Once you accept that these builders cared about sound, a much older set of questions reopens. How did people working with copper and rope move blocks that weighed as much as a loaded freight train? How did they cut granite, one of the hardest stones on Earth, with an accuracy modern crews struggle to match using diamond saws? And why does the same strange idea keep surfacing in the oldest written records we have? From Egypt to Babylon to the banned pages of Enoch, that stone could be commanded to move by sound. Consider what moving a single one of these stones actually requires. A block of 100 tons is heavier than a fully loaded semi-truck with its trailer. To drag it up a ramp, you need thousands of people pulling in perfect coordination, a ramp longer than the pyramid is tall, and a surface that will not crumble under the load. Then you have to stop it, lift it, and set it down within a hair of its final position, over and over, more than 2 million times for the Great Pyramid alone, at a pace that would mean placing a block every few minutes for 20 years without rest. The arithmetic does not close. It has never closed. Every generation of engineers that has run the numbers has walked away with the same quiet admission that we do not actually know how it was done. And moving the stones is only half of the impossibility. The other half is cutting them. In the granite quarries at Aswan lies an obelisk the ancient workers began carving straight out of the bedrock and then abandoned when a crack ran through it. Had it been finished, it would have stood over 130 feet tall and weighed close to 1,100 tons, a single needle of solid granite heavier than a modern airliner. It was being shaped in place, in the living rock, to a precision that copper tools simply cannot reach, because copper is far softer than granite and blunts against it almost at once. When the archaeologist Flinders Petrie examined drill cores pulled from Egyptian granite in the late 1800s, he found spiral grooves cut into the stone that suggested a drill advancing through solid rock at a speed his own engineers could not reproduce. Petrie was no fringe theorist. He was the most careful excavator of his generation, and the marks left him openly puzzled. And before we go further, I need to pause for a second, because what I'm about to tell you gets significantly darker. And I realized a while ago that some of this cannot be fully explained in a video format. The complete reconstruction of the lost Egyptian acoustic method for moving and shaping stone, the exact resonant frequencies measured inside the king's chamber, the tool marks that no copper chisel could have left, the acoustician's own field measurements listed frequency by frequency. I put it all into a written document. It's linked below, and the QR code is on your screen. Now let's continue. South of the Great Pyramid, cut into the bedrock at Saqqara, there is a tunnel system that the archaeologist Auguste Mariette opened in 1850. Inside it sit 24 boxes carved from single blocks of granite and quartzite. Each one weighs between 70 and 100 tons. The lids alone weigh around 30. They were fitted into narrow rock alcoves with clearances so tight a sheet of paper struggles to pass between box and wall. The interior corners are cut square to a flatness that inspectors measure in fractions of a millimeter. Nobody has ever found the tools that made them. Nobody has explained how objects that heavy were slid into place inside a cramped tunnel where there is no room to swing a lever or stand a crane. The official explanation for those boxes is that they held the mummified bodies of sacred bulls. But that answer raises more problems than it settles. Why machine a coffin for an animal to a flatness measured in thousandths of an inch? Why haul 100 tons of the hardest available stone to bury a bull when soft limestone would have done the job? Stand in that tunnel and the boxes feel less like coffins and more like containers built to hold something under pressure, or built to an exact dimension for a reason that had nothing to do with the animals later placed inside them. The bulls may have been latecomers to boxes that were already ancient and already there. The same pattern that repeats all through this story. A later people using a structure they found rather than one they made. Move north to Lebanon and the numbers get worse. Beneath the Roman temple at Baalbek lies a foundation platform of stone blocks, so large the Romans built on top of them, rather than attempt anything similar. 3 of them, known together as the Trilithon, weigh roughly 800 tons each. In the quarry nearby, a single dressed block still lies half attached to the bedrock. It weighs an estimated 1,000 tons. No crane built before the modern era could lift it. Most cranes built today cannot either. Local tradition, older than the Romans and older than the Greeks, says the platform was laid by a race of giants in the age before the flood. The granite that roofs the king's chamber is the part that should not be possible at all. Those slabs were quarried at Aswan, floated hundreds of miles down the Nile, dragged across the desert, and then lifted more than 150 feet into the air to be set as a ceiling deep inside a mountain of masonry already largely built. Above them sit 4 more layers of the same massive granite beams, stacked in hollow compartments, each layer another set of 70-ton stones raised even higher. There is no ramp inside a finished pyramid. There is no space above the chamber to stand and pull. However those beams got up there, they were placed by a method that left no ramp, no scaffold, and no scar on the surrounding stone, and every reconstruction using ropes and levers breaks down against the simple problem of where the men and the machines were supposed to stand. There is a reason granite keeps appearing at the center of these structures, and it is not only hardness. Granite is packed with quartz crystal, and quartz has a property physicists call piezoelectricity. Squeeze it or vibrate it, and it generates a small electrical charge. Run a charge through it, and it vibrates. It is the same crystal that keeps time inside a wristwatch and tunes the signal inside a radio. The king's chamber is built entirely of granite hauled 500 miles from Aswan. Its ceiling made of 9 slabs weighing as much as 70 tons apiece, with 5 hollow compartments stacked above them. An American engineer named Christopher Dunn spent years arguing that the chamber was never a tomb at all, that it was the resonant heart of a machine, a structure built to be driven by vibration and to answer back. No body was ever found in it. No inscription names a king buried there. What it holds is an empty granite box, machined flat, sitting in a room that rings. Danley's readings pointed at a specific set of tones. The chamber's resonance is clustered around a chord in F sharp, dropping down into infrasound, the range below what the ear can register but the body still feels. Researchers have noted that the same note appears again and again in the tuning of ancient sites. Whether that is coincidence or intention, the pattern holds. These rooms were built to hold a note, and a room built to hold a note is a room built by people who cared what a note could do. When John Stuart Reid, a British acoustics researcher, brought his own equipment into the king's chamber, he documented the same resonant behavior and added something stranger. Reid works with cymatics, the study of how sound vibration organizes matter into visible form. Drive a plate of sand or a film of water with a pure tone and the grains and ripples leap into geometry, rings and stars and lattices that shift as the frequency changes. Reid argued that the chamber was not simply resonant but shaped around these principles, that whoever built it understood the relationship between a tone and the form that tone produces in physical material. A room on the island of Malta pushes the point further. Beneath the town of Paola, a Neolithic complex called the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni was carved out of solid limestone more than 5,000 years ago. One chamber inside it, the space researchers call the Oracle Room, has an acoustic property that has been measured many times. A male voice at around 110 Hz sets the entire chamber ringing. The sound seems to pour out of the walls themselves and can be felt in the chest and in the bones of the skull. In 2008, a team at the University of California measured what happens to the human brain at that exact frequency. Activity in the regions tied to language quieted, and activity shifted toward the areas linked to mood and intuition. The builders of that room chose a frequency that changes the state of the person standing inside it, and they did it thousands of years before anyone could measure a single hertz. Malta is not the only site tuned to that pitch. The same research effort tested a string of ancient stone chambers across Britain and Ireland, structures raised in the same deep antiquity, from the Great Passage Mound at Newgrange to the burial chamber known as Wayland's Smithy. Again and again, the strongest resonance landed close to 110 hertz, the identical pitch, in sites separated by open sea and by centuries, built by peoples with no known contact. Either a great many unrelated builders stumbled onto the same frequency by pure accident, or they were all working from a shared understanding of what that particular pitch does inside a stone room and inside the human head. One accidental match is a coincidence. A pattern this wide starts to look like a specification. None of this proves that sound lifted the stones. What it proves is that these builders were fixated on resonance, that they engineered for it on purpose, and that the fixation spans continents and thousands of years. And then there is the modern man who claimed he had worked it out. In Florida, in the 1920s, a Latvian immigrant named Edward Leeds Skalnin built a monument now called Coral Castle out of coral limestone blocks, some weighing up to 30 tons, cut and set entirely by himself. He stood 5 feet tall and weighed about 100 pounds. He worked alone, at night, and refused to let anyone watch. When neighbors asked how he did it, he said only that he understood the laws of weight and leverage, and that he had learned the secret the builders of the pyramids had known. He died in 1951 and wrote none of it down. Before we move on to the next passage, stop for a second. What you just heard about the resonance built into these chambers is the part that changes everything. But it only makes sense when you see it written out next to the passage in Enoch that names the craft. The measured frequencies, the impossible tool marks. It's all in the document linked below. Take 5 seconds right now, grab it, and then come back, because what comes next builds directly on it. The link is in the description. QR code is on your screen. The idea that this knowledge was taught and then taken away is not something modern researchers invented. It is written into the oldest layers of Scripture, including the pages the church chose to remove. The Book of Enoch, cut from the Bible by church authorities in the 4th century and preserved intact only by the Ethiopian church, tells of a group of beings it calls the Watchers, who came down and taught humanity crafts that were never meant to be shared. One of them, named Azazel, taught the working of metal and the cutting of the earth. Another taught the courses of the heavens. The text frames this not as a gift, but as a crime, a leaking of knowledge from a higher order into human hands, and it says the beings responsible were bound and sealed beneath the earth for it. Whatever you believe about its origin, the story preserves a specific memory, that the ability to shape stone came from somewhere else, arrived suddenly, and was later withdrawn. The Book of Enoch does not speak in vague terms about this, it names names. 200 of the Watchers are said to have descended onto the summit of Mount Hermon and bound themselves by oath to what they were about to do. Their leader, called Shemhazai, organized the descent. Azazel taught the making of blades and shields and the working of metals drawn out of the ground. Others taught the reading of the stars, the signs of the sun and the moon, the splitting of roots, the meaning of the earth. The knowledge is laid out like a catalog of trades, each craft tied to a named teacher, and every one of those crafts is a form of power over the physical world that humanity was not meant to hold on its own. The oldest fragments of the text, found among the Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran and written in Aramaic, preserve this list intact. The church did not remove Enoch because it was nonsense. It removed Enoch because it was specific. That same memory survives in the Hebrew tradition, in a form that speaks almost directly to sound and stone. When Solomon raised the first temple in Jerusalem, the account in the first book of Kings records a strange detail. No hammer, no chisel, no iron tool of any kind was heard at the building site while it went up. The stones arrived already finished. Jewish legend fills the gap with something called the shamir, a substance or creature able to cut through the hardest rock in silence, splitting stone without force or friction. The holiest structure the tradition knows was raised without the sound of a single tool. And in the same scriptures, sound does the opposite job just as easily. At Jericho, the walls do not fall to battering rams. They fall to horns and to a shout, a coordinated blast of sound aimed at stone, and the stone comes down. One account builds in silence. The other tears down with noise. Both treat sound and stone as things that answer to each other. Push back to Babylon and the pattern completes itself. The builders on the plain of Shinar set out to raise a tower to the heavens, and the text says they could attempt it because they were one people with one language. The thing that stopped them was not a flood or an army. It was the sudden loss of that shared language. They could no longer understand one another. The work halted, and the people scattered across the earth. Read it as the loss of ordinary speech, and it is a story about a building project collapsing over a communication problem. Read it next to everything else. The tuned chambers and the silent temple and the craft the Watchers were punished for teaching, and a different shape appears. A single shared frequency, a common tone that let many people move as one, and the removal of it as the event that ended the age of building on that scale. After Babel, the great stones stop. What comes after is smaller, cruder, and copied. The tower on the plain of Shinar was not only a story. At the center of Babylon stood a real ziggurat called Etemenanki, a name that translates as the foundation of heaven and earth, a stepped mountain of brick that rose in terraces toward a shrine at its summit. The Greek historians who saw it described a structure so vast it strained belief, and the Babylonians themselves called their city Bab-Ilu, the gate of the gods. The people who built these things believed they were raising a physical connection between the ground and the sky, and they believed the right words, spoken by the right people in unison, carried real force. When the scriptures say the builders were scattered by the confusion of their single language, they are describing the collapse of exactly that, a unified people speaking as one, undone at the level of the voice itself. Notice what all of these accounts share. The knowledge is never described as forgotten by accident. It is described as taken, sealed, confused, or bound. Enoch's watchers are chained under the earth, so their teaching cannot spread. The one language at Babel is deliberately scrambled. The shamir that cut Solomon's stone vanishes from the world and cannot be found again. Traditions that never touched each other all reach for the same idea, that this power was not lost the way a skill quietly fades, but closed off on purpose, put beyond human reach by something that had decided humanity should not keep it. This is where the trail leads to a single idea that ties the whole thing together. If the technique was real, it should leave a signature, and that signature should end somewhere. It should appear in the oldest and most precise structures, and then vanish, and everything built afterward should show hands straining to imitate work they could no longer actually do. That is close to what the record shows. The most astonishing stonework in Egypt is not the latest, it is the earliest. The precision of the Great Pyramid, the granite boxes of the Serapeum, the vast tight-fitted blocks buried at Abydos, all of it sits at or near the beginning. The temples that come later, the ones with names and dates and kings carved proudly across every surface, are built of smaller stones joined with mortar and boast. The skill does not climb over time, it falls. You can watch the skill drain away century by century if you follow the temples forward in time. The later monuments of Egypt are gorgeous, covered wall to wall in carved scenes and painted color, temples like Dendera and Edfu that draw crowds today for good reason. But look at how they are actually built. They are assembled from smaller blocks, softer sandstone rather than granite, set with mortar in the joints and held together in ways the earliest builders never needed. The decoration grows richer as the engineering grows weaker. The people carving those beautiful walls were reverent tenants living inside the ruins of something they could describe in stone and worship in ceremony but could no longer construct. They inherited the temples of the gods and spent their genius on the paint. The last of the great structures may still be standing at Abydos, in the desert north of Luxor. Behind the elegant painted temple of Seti I, at the bottom of a pit that fills with groundwater, sits a building that matches nothing around it. It is called the Osirian, and it is raised from enormous blocks of red granite and quartzite, some weighing around 100 tons, fitted together with the same brute precision found at Giza and found nowhere in the temple standing in front of it. It carries no inscriptions from its builders. It sits far below the floor level of everything nearby, as though the ground rose around it across a very long stretch of time. The Egyptians, who built the beautiful temple beside it, treated the Osirian as already sacred and already ancient, a relic of an earlier age they honored but could not reproduce. If any structure in Egypt is the last one raised with the vanished method, the last temple built before the knowledge was sealed away, the Osirian is the strongest candidate. It looks less like a beginning than like an ending. Almost every one of these traditions places the same event at the seam where the great building stops. Before the flood, the works are titanic, and the builders are described as more than human. After it, the scale collapses, and the survivors are left rebuilding from memory. Enoch's watchers are sealed underground before the waters come. The giants that local legend says raised the platform at Baalbek belong to the age before the flood. The clean, precise, megalithic layer at the bottom of so many sites sits beneath the cruder work stacked on top of it, quite literally older and quite literally deeper. Whatever actually happened, the ancient world remembered it the same way, across languages that had no contact with one another. There was a time when stone obeyed, and then there was a line, and after the line, it did not. There is one account, disputed but never fully explained away, that describes the thing happening in front of witnesses. A Swedish physician identified in the record as Dr. Jarl is said to have watched, in a Tibetan monastery in the 1930s, a group of monks raise heavy stone blocks up a cliff face using nothing but sound. The description, later set down by the Swedish engineer Henry Kjellson, has the monks arranging drums and long trumpets in a precise arc around the stone, every instrument aimed at the block, building the sound in waves until the stone lifted from the ground and drifted upward along the curve of the instruments. The account is impossible to verify and easy to dismiss. What is harder to explain is why the method it describes, sound sources arranged in geometry around a mass and driven in resonance, is exactly the arrangement a physicist would design today to move an object with acoustic force. The physics behind the idea is no longer speculative. In modern acoustic levitation, engineers arrange sound sources so that their waves collide and cancel at fixed points in the air, creating pockets of pressure that hold an object suspended against gravity. Researchers have used it to float water, small living creatures, electronic parts, even to assemble tiny structures in midair without a single tool touching them. The forces involved today are small because the equipment is small. Nothing in the underlying principle forbids scaling it up. A sound wave carries momentum, and a wave large enough and focused enough carries enough momentum to move a serious mass. The gap between floating a droplet in a laboratory and lifting a granite block off the quarry floor is a gap of power and precision, not a gap of physical law. Here is what makes all of this impossible to wave away. The principle is already proven, and the only open question left is scale, which is an engineering problem rather than a law of nature. Somewhere between the empty granite box that rings in the king's chamber, the boxes at Saqqara that no tool explains, the 1,000-ton stone still lying in the quarry at Baalbek, the temple raised in total silence, the walls brought down by a shout, and the craft the watchers were sealed underground for teaching, there is either the largest coincidence in the history of architecture or the faint outline of something we lost. The builders left the rooms tuned. They left the stones cut to a standard we still cannot match. The record of where the knowledge came from and how it was taken survived as well. What they did not leave behind was the method itself. That part they sealed. And the deepest and oldest structures they raised are still down there in the dark, still ringing at frequencies below hearing, waiting for someone to walk in with the right instrument and finally ask the stone the one question it was built to answer, then wait in the dark for the low note that rises back through the granite, and to wait for the slow reply back.